Hello, I'm so excited to have Camille Martin on the Awaken Feminine podcast today. Camille is a registered dietitian, a public health writer, former chronic dieter, and owner of Love to Lose. And I know she has so much love and wisdom to share with us today. Welcome, Camille.
Thank you so much, Kaki. I'm really excited to be on, and thank you for having me.
I'm so excited for our conversation because yeah, we just never know where the conversation goes. So it's always really
Yeah.
exciting. I want to ask you, Camille, before we get started, do you mind sharing with us where you're joining me from and tell us a bit more about who you are and why you do what you do?
Okay, yeah, great. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is in the south of the United States. I'm a registered dietitian, as you said, and how I came to be a registered dietitian was sort of by accident, but it starts way, way, way long ago when I was 12 years old, roughly. I started dieting at obviously a very early age and struggled with um, just roller coaster dieting, failing that cycle for almost 25 years. And in between, had an eating disorder and body self-image, massive self-esteem issues, and body dysmorphia borderline, I would say. And all of those things wrapped up together led me to finally saying, after about 25 years of that misery, that I'm not going to do this to myself anymore. And I decided to quit dieting, and it really turned my whole life around and changed everything. Helped me not only lose the same 10 pounds I've been trying to diet off, which is insane because 10 pounds, who cares? But it was like I was relentlessly trying to get rid of it because of the messages that women get about their bodies. But anyway, yeah. So once I finally quit, I decided to learn more about nutrition and about my body and how my food affects my body. And I ended up taking a class at a local university after work, and then just randomly ended up by chance becoming a dietitian. And so now it's my mission to not only help women learn how to eat better and take care of themselves more in their bodies, but also to understand the cultural and societal forces that are behind this relentless desire to change our bodies and the self-hatred that it brings. So I definitely want to use my story and all of the pain that I've experienced as a way to help other women know, like, I know what it's like, and I really want to help. That's my biggest goal. So
Mm.
yeah.
Wow, that's a beautiful mission. And wow, starting since you were 12. I
Yeah.
want to ask you, you know, do you remember what was going on when you were at 12 to go, I need to go on a diet? Because,
Yeah.
a lot of times, I mean, I used to work in a pediatric hospital. I'm a pharmacist and I'll be on the wards, and most of our eating disorder patients are in their teens. So probably around
Yeah.
the 14, 15, 16 mark. But, 12 is earlier than that. So what would
Yeah.
make a 12-year-old go, I need to go on a diet?
That's an excellent question. And the answer is that the messages I was getting from the women around me, including my mother and my mother's friends and my friends who were also getting those same messages. This was the early 80s. So our mothers were all, this was before these conversations of, you shouldn't say to your children, that's going to make you fat. Don't eat that. So it was really at that point in my life before I was 12, no food was off limits. And then all of a sudden I started hearing these things like, oh, you really shouldn't eat that. It's going to make you fat. And it was a lot of stuff. It was also the men around me giving me these messages, both overtly and not so overtly, that what women looked like was most important, even above their achievements. And then certainly the media. But I lived in a house where my parents entertained a lot. And so they were really off. They were wonderful and loving, and I was raised in a wonderful home, but I was sort of alone, and just really the internalization of all of these messages without also having the outlet of being able to talk to my parents about it, is very isolating. And I thought, there's something really wrong with me. I need to lose weight or I need to be skinny, like that was really a focus. So, and then that honestly set up a horrible scenario of where I was also, because of my loneliness, learning to use food to make myself feel better. And then going off into my parents' living den with the TV and shutting the door, taking tons of food in there with me and eating and feeling so much better, but then hating myself after I did, because I knew it was something I shouldn't be doing. But anyway, so that's what led to my starting to diet, over exercise, take diet pills. And then when I went to college and I had no more structure, and then drinking was involved and introduced to the scenario, I felt like the wheels really came off the bus, and I was binge eating to the point where it was really showing up. So in desperation, I learned how to, I was bulimic, so I learned how to get rid of it. And, it was terrible. But anyway, that's sort of how the whole thing developed.
Wow. I want to talk about this because, right back, in the 80s, there's not social media, right? And
Yeah,
yes,
right.
so you were talking about internalizing and messages just from people around you. So that's why I wanted to ask that question, because 12-year-olds now have access to phones, have access to the
That's
internet,
terrible.
and it's just such a important topic to talk about, especially myself as a parent as well, and I know you've got kids as well. Being able to empower them to accept their bodies, and also to ensure that they know what they see on TV, on social media, isn't real as such, right? Yeah, because not
Right.
every woman has that, curvaceous body or that skinny body, whatever, we're all made so differently.
Right.
Yeah, I want to ask you, what are like some of the telltale signs of, a young person having eating disorder, body dysmorphia, just so that parents out there who are listening, at least kind of go, oh, actually my child's
I need to pay attention to this. Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say if you have young children and you're trying to shepherd them in through this time, and as a dietitian, my advice is always not let your kids eat whatever they want in terms of making it a free for all, but I'm a big fan of letting your children make their own choices when it comes to eating. So restricting your kids from certain foods and saying, no, you need, or clean your plate, or, you can't eat that. These things are bad. These things are good. Don't do that if it's at all possible. I mean, you don't have to buy your kids Coke and like let them just go crazy, but let them make choices as much as possible and bring them into the process of cooking the meals, being a part of at least what you decide to eat. But the signs that things are happening, and I think it's inevitable if your child is showing these signs, it's not because of you doing anything wrong necessarily, but you're right. It is a result of constant having that in your face. And even though we all do have different body shapes, a lot of the time, the shapes that you see are, those apps where you can actually like move your chin over, make your arm. I don't think they even look like that, but yeah. So signs, my daughters, as diligent as I am, are already showing signs. My oldest daughter says, I'm not hungry. She won't eat anything. I see her picking at her food and I worry about that. My youngest daughter is doing the opposite. She's eating and eating and eating. And she does do stuff like go into her room and bring food up. And so I'm working with her, and then she'll come to me separately and crying and saying, am I fat? Am I ugly? Do you think I'm pretty? It's inevitable that they're going to get this psychotic, unrealistic or pressure to be put on women. But yeah, those are signs. And you just have to keep the door open. I think just talk to him, ask him, why do you feel that way? Tell me why. Don't just say, oh no, you're so beautiful, don't worry about it. Like, tell me why you feel that way. Just make it a conversation, because it has to be, otherwise they will go off by themselves and like if you don't talk to them about it, they're going to take all those messages, internalize them, and act in response to those without even realizing that what they're doing is destructive. So I hope that it was a good answer to
Yeah, it is. I think
yeah.
communication plays such a big role, in any relationship, whether it's mother-daughter, husband-wife,
Sure.
partners, same-sex partners, whatever. And
Right.
especially in this day and age where, half the time when your kids get to that certain age, you don't know what they're looking at on their phone or on the iPad, or so it's just so important to keep that communication going. And I love that you have those conversations with your daughters to make sure
Yeah.
that they are being looked after and that they are comfortable to come to you if there's anything.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
the main thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And because eating disorders, people hide it, and I hid it very, very well. So yeah, they're not going to tell you, oh, I think I'm leaning toward anorexia. They're going to try to hide it from you. So just be aware, pay attention to what they're doing, and then just talk to them about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember I had a friend back in high school and she started becoming anorexic, and it was very obvious because we can see her shrinking, but they can't
Right.
see she couldn't see that she was getting skinnier. She still thought she was
Right.
fat. And even now, I mean, gosh, when did I go to high school? More than 20 years ago. Oh
No,
gosh.
I know. That's 30 years ago. So yeah, it's hard to remember.
Yeah. um she still has those signs of not eating. I go out with her, I've never seen her eat. Whenever we go out, we're still, oh, let's have a coffee, or let's have breakfast. Oh, I'm not hungry, you eat and I
Yeah.
will drink. So coming back now to adult women, and you've gone through this process, you've had 25 years of dieting, chronic dieting, yo-yo dieting, doing all the things.
Right.
How did you get yourself out of it? Having just all, like, most of your life doing what you were doing.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to say that those things that I internalized so deeply so long ago never leave me. It's always in there. I just am aware of it, and I know how to manage it, and I've retrained my thinking. I mean, I'll be honest, not a day goes by that I don't wake up and look down at my body and say, okay, like, now what's today going to be like based on what I see now? Like, and I'm like, it's always there with me, but I just know how to manage it. And so I try to teach women those things that you feel. Don't resist how you feel about your body and about yourself. Just let it be, and then take steps to manage it, if that makes sense. But yeah, so one of my biggest revelation moments was when, after about 25 years of this, and I was in my late 20s, I guess, early 30s rather, I realized that this whole dieting, starving myself, binge eating, the whole thing was so insane. It was so destructive emotionally and psychologically that I sat down one day in my apartment, and I just burst into tears, and I said, I can't do this anymore. And the worst thing I could have come up with at that point was to never lose the 10 pounds, but then also gain more. But I was so low, at a low point, that I would have rather suffered that consequence than to continue inflicting all of this pain on myself. So I decided to quit dieting, and I just said, you know what? I'm going to eat. If I'm hungry, I'm going to eat. If I don't feel like doing a 5-mile run and killing myself, I'm going to go for a walk. And basically, I just started being nice to myself and allowing, I mean, it's so simple, but it's like, I woke up the next day and I was like, today's a new day. What do I want to do today? And when I started releasing all of that pressure and that resistance, my whole state of mind changed. And therefore, what I did started to change. And so it was a gradual process of just embracing myself, and also all of the crazy stuff in my head. Instead of resisting, how I felt about myself. Okay, well, why do I feel that way? Let's go back. I'm all the stuff I'm telling you now, it took me forever to get to the point where I could see it for what it was,
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
you gotta be
Yeah.
aware.
Yeah. That's awesome. I want to ask you, when you started going, I'm going to be nice to myself, and you didn't put all that pressure on yourself to be a certain weight.
Right.
What happened to your weight? Did you said you didn't care anymore, but did you put on weight? Did you lose weight? What
I
happened?
lost weight. I lost weight. And now I realize the weight that was there, I was creating that weight with all of my psychological crap, hating myself. Hating your body, resisting your body, having these horrible conversations with yourself in your head that most people aren't aware of. Like, oh my God, I am so disgusting. Oh my God, I look so fat. What's wrong with you? Why can't you just stop eating? When you're doing those things, it's pushing you to binge because that's what you train yourself to do to make yourself feel better if you eat emotionally, like I did. So when all of that pressure was gone, I was not feeling compelled to shove food in because I didn't need to anymore. So the weight that I'd been so desperate to lose, that 10 pounds, that same 10 pounds for 25 years, it's ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
It went away, not overnight, but I wasn't staring at myself, hating myself anymore. I was just being, and it dropped off. And then I got excited about setting goals that didn't have to do with weight loss necessarily, but that helped my body be strong, like training for a marathon. I did that. Going back to school and learning how food affected my body. Like, let's approach it with like, if food is just fuel, like what is the big damn deal? Why are we making food this huge power over our lives? So I started setting goals. I started achieving goals. It empowered me and made me feel good about myself. So the need to binge eat, all the self-hatred, all of the feeling like a failure that I had not succeeded for so long, it was gone. And so my behaviors changed and all of that spilled over into my health, and the weight just sort of lost itself, which is amazing.
It
Yeah.
is. It is absolutely amazing. A lot of times it's that like as you were saying, is that emotional baggage,
Mhm.
and your body does remember trauma and all that, is just holding on to it. And I
Yeah.
love that once you kind of just release it, that kind of
It
releases as
It
well.
does. But I do want to make a critical point here is that the weight has fluctuated over time. For instance, I went through a divorce a few years ago and I won't get into that, but it was awful, truly horrible. And I would not wish it on anyone. But my binge eating behaviors and binge drinking came back full force. And I gained that weight back plus some. And it was hard for me to see that weight on myself. I'm 5'2", so it showed up pretty obviously. But I know what's happening. I'm using food and I'm using alcohol to cope with the pain, and it's okay. So let's just address it, from the perspective of I know where it's coming from. And now that I'm past that divorce and it's 2 years gone, my body has stabilized again because well, I quit drinking for one thing. So that helped, which, that was not a healthy thing. But yeah, so just because you get to the root of it and, you lose, the weight starts to shed itself, it might come back depending on your life scenario, but it's important not to beat yourself up. It's God Almighty, we are all so beautiful as women. It just enrages me that we are trained to hate ourselves so much.
Yeah.
And that's one reason I'm doing what I'm doing, is to release women from this prison. It's bullshit. Sorry. I hope you can
It's
edit
okay.
out my
It's
my
okay.
bad.
We can swear on this podcast.
Okay. Oh, you should have told me that.
You're like, I would have sworn
But
it ages ago.
yeah, but I mean, like, isn't it awful what society does to us? And we
Yeah.
believe that we just absorb all of these negative, destructive messages. And we waste our whole lives, being just obsessed with what we look like, hyper focused on it. I mean, Khaki, I'm 52, and not a day goes by that I don't look in the mirror and go like this, like, oh, what would I look like if I just did this? And it's like, stop it, but it's hard. It's those cultural messages are strong. So we just have to get band together and say, do we have to edit our selfies? Do we have to? I don't know.
Yeah.
It might be getting a little bit better, but it's not enough to make the women in their 30s, 40s, and 50s to reverse all the damage that we suffered from, the 80s, the 90s. But anyway, so okay. I'll stop talking now.
It's awesome. I love that you talk so much. 2 points. 2 points here. You're a tiny person like me, so I love that. You're 5'2". I'm only 5 foot, so you're taller than me still.
Okay.
So
I'm taller than somebody.
And you look amazing for 52. I would,
thank you.
Yeah, I would have thought you were at least 10 years younger. So
thank you. Well, I take care of myself now better than I used to. Yeah. So 10 years ago, I probably looked 60. So now,
you said you looked older 10 years ago, but your mindset's probably changed, and the way you look after yourself has changed, and that contributes so much to how you look on the outside as well.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And I love that, that you were so real in telling us that you do go back, you can go back to those old behaviors, because when you're triggered again with, trauma, your body's just like, oh, that was the safe thing for me to do back then. I'm going to do it again. But being able to do the inner work that you've done, in your journey, you're able to recognize that and go, I know what you're doing.
Right.
And I will, I'll just go with the flow with what I need right now, but I know what I'm doing, and I can get out of this. And that's so important, isn't it?
Yeah, because when you shame yourself, that's a key point. When we shame ourselves for our behaviors, instead of looking at where they came from in the first place and understanding that why you learned how to cope the way you did with food or alcohol or prescription drugs or online shopping or whatever, there are reasons why you learned how to do these things. You're not a bad person. It's not that you don't have enough willpower, or you're lazy, or you're a loser, or whatever. It's you train yourself to do this. So when you find yourself doing these destructive behaviors, if you're shaming yourself right away, you're just going to keep doing more of it. So you got to drop the shame and say, here I am today. I am such a beautiful person inside. Not me, I'm talking about anyone, just like what you've been through in your life. If you had to learn how to use food to make yourself feel better, there's a reason, and you need to go back and see that and give yourself a break. Like you're probably a kid like I was. So it's okay. Just don't shame yourself, or you will go nowhere. You'll stay stuck. Yeah.
Are there any other tips for people who want to change their behavior, but having that trouble changing, like you're saying, going back and back and back and keep doing the same thing, apart from letting go of the shame? What else can they do to help change their behavior?
Well, I think one thing, of course, I focus on weight loss. So for example, with that, if you are struggling with that, it's important to do that work of going back and uncovering all of that, your history of eating in a disordered way. But you can work starting today on changing your habits and changing your thoughts deliberately. I have a process for doing that. If anyone wants to head over to my website, check it out, whatever. I mean, you can put my website in the notes if you feel like it, but there's a process for changing your thoughts. And when you change your thoughts, methodically, you identify them, you have to be aware of them first. And then you also change your habits little by little. And those two start working together. You start to see exponential results because one fuels the other and vice versa. And certainly, by all means, stop dieting. Diets keep the weight from coming off because they create massive resistance, and all that resistance you feel, having to use willpower, having to cut out whole food groups, staring at your body and hating your body, what you see, all of that resistance is going to push you right back into the behaviors that make you feel better. So quit dieting if that's the group of women who are listening to this. But if anyone who's listening to this, after going back and doing all of that work, you just have to start making small changes in your life to what you're currently doing today. And a lot of that takes reflection. And I always say, clients I've ever worked with, when I say journaling and being quiet, everyone's like, oh my God, please don't make me journal. Like, no one wants to sit outside and meditate and write in a journal, but it is so transformative. And anyone who's resisting that, I always say, just go buy a beautiful new journal, make that, feel good about that. And then just write anything down. There's no pressure to write something perfect down, but just sit quietly even and just think. The thoughts, if you listen to your intuition, it will show up. If you sit down and say, what's really going on here? You're going to get an answer. It's amazing, So yeah. I would recommend that highly.
I love that because, as someone that has always got a really busy mind, it's so important to just take that time to just be quiet. It's like, just shut up and get everyone else to shut up around you and just have that time. Even if it's 2 minutes, it's better than 0 minutes.
Yeah, baby steps. A little bit is better than nothing. Yeah. Get quiet.
I think a lot of times it's people are too scared to hear what the thoughts are, what your intuition, God, whatever your beliefs are, to actually get those messages and hear the truth. Because people are so scared of that. And I don't know what your thoughts are, how do you get people to overcome, the fear of actually knowing the truth? Because that's the most painful part to get to.
I would say, number one, isn't it better than what you're doing? Like, to keep staying stuck in these patterns. And number two, everything you hear that you might need to face that's uncomfortable, all of the progress is on the other side of that, But yeah, so everything on the other side of the revelations is progress. Things that I'm trying to think of, like, what would be scary to hear. It's just mostly it's really only one thing. You're not honoring yourself. Most women don't. We do everything for everybody else. We don't do anything for ourselves. So I think any woman who sits down and says, okay, tell me what is happening. Tell me what I need to do, God, universe, you're going to get wonderful feedback, I think. Don't be afraid. Be afraid of talking to yourself like you're the worst person on the face of the planet. That's worse.
Yes, that is way worse. And I think most of us who have been on the journey where we go, all right, enough is enough. That's when we can actually go, okay, I need to be nice to myself. That's when the best things happen. That's when the magic happens and your life gets better and just everything falls into place. Everything that didn't work out, you kind of can see why it didn't work out. You can join all the dots. But until you allow yourself that space to just even reflect back.
Right. Well, I can look back on my marriage, for example, and see that my intuition was speaking to me the whole time. And there were a couple of moments where I had these questions come up in my mind saying, like, are you going to be okay with this for the rest of your life? And it just like, bam, out of nowhere. And I shoved it down. So as painful as my divorce was at the time, if you had told me I would ever get a divorce, I never would have believed it. Like no one I know is divorced. It was like unthinkable. But once it happened, now that I'm on the other side of it, I am so happy. Like, and I'm not happy because I got rid of him. I mean, he's the father of my children, but I'm so happy that now I'm honoring myself, and everything good has happened on the other side of it, obviously, because I wasn't honoring myself before. I wasn't speaking up. I wasn't saying what I needed. And yeah, I think people are afraid of, like, if you're afraid of asking yourself the important questions, like, is this the person for me? Or is this the job for me? You know, what am I going to do? How will I ever get another job? You will, you know, these things are, it's not impossible to find something you love doing. It's not impossible to find someone in your life who respects you and treats you like you deserve to be treated. So yeah, don't be afraid of anything. It's my experience that even the bad stuff, especially the bad stuff, happens for you to figure out, like, who am I through this? That's how you figure out what you're really made of and who you really are. So yeah.
I love that you mentioned that, because I believe that as well. Like all what we believe are bad stuff, there is an opportunity for us to grow and see what's not working in our lives, and gives us actually an opportunity to change it. It's like, okay, we're putting you through this shit. Are you gonna keep doing what you're doing, or are you gonna like
This
move?
happened, like, wake up. Yeah.
And if you don't, change it, then something worse will happen, and it's like that'll be a punch in the face next time, not a slap.
Yeah, something worse will happen. You'll waste your whole life being somebody that you're not, you know? Yeah.
So I love that. I want to ask you, because obviously with what you do, because of your journey, you know that dieting doesn't work for weight loss. It's really about changing your mindset, changing your whole vibration and energy, to see things in a different way, to love yourself, and all that beautiful stuff that I love. Do you, because you're a dietitian, so do you also teach people how to, like, I guess, eat properly? Or because obviously diet does affect your weight, but I know you also say not to restrict yourself either. So how do you balance the not restricting yourself, but also making sure that people are eating properly as well?
Yeah, well, I might have slightly of a different approach than most dietitians, because I tell women, stop focusing on the food so much, because we're focusing on food to the exclusion of addressing the way that we use food and the way we eat the food. Because it's my belief, sincerely, and I'm not saying this in a condescending, judgmental way, we all know what to eat. We know, you know what I mean? Like, it's not some big mystery. And when women come to me and say, oh, I love what you're saying, I get it, and that's so true, now give me the menu, tell me what to eat for the next 2 weeks so that I can lose weight, I say, no, like, that's not what you want to focus on. For sure, the way you fuel your body affects the way that you think. And if you're thinking the wrong things, and you're jacked up on sugar, and you crash and you feel depressed, because it's a real thing, you're not going to go very far. So what I tell women is, just stop trying to obsess. I feel like we all obsess over, like, individual nutrients. Like, am I getting enough protein? Are carbs evil? And what kinds of carbs? I mean, it's pretty obvious. The bad carbs are in Coca-Cola, things with high fructose corn syrup. We know all of these things. Stick to mostly shopping in the produce section. Incorporate things gradually. You'll start to feel differently based on how you're fueling yourself. But this all or nothing, I'm going to throw out all my food, and I'm going to buy, only produce, and I'm going to juice for 2 straight weeks. And then this is what is really the undercurrent of this. Then once I lose the weight, then my life will be perfect. No, what's going to happen is you might lose the weight. You probably will, but it's going to come back because of your habits, and you're going to revert back. So I tell women, stop obsessing about the food. Just start making gradual changes. But what you need to change are your habits. So like if your habit is to sit down at the end of the day because you're exhausted from being a people pleaser and from totally neglecting yourself, and you want to sit down on the couch, and what you do every night is take a thing of ice cream and you sit down and you start eating ice cream while you're watching Netflix. Believe me, I get it, because I used to do that same thing. What you want to do is take that habit, you want to engage in it fully with no judgment. You want to see, like, what am I thinking? What thoughts are involved before, during, and after I engaged in that habit? And start working with, like, you'll be shocked at what you think about, like, I deserve to eat. Oh, I worked so hard all day. I was good today, so I deserve to eat. Eating ice cream is a part of an enjoyable life. These kinds of things, you can start busting those apart. And then while you're doing it, instead of saying, I'm not going to do that anymore, I'm not going to eat ice cream in front of Netflix, I'm just not doing it. And then the next night, you find yourself doing the same thing, shaming yourself, feeling like a lazy loser, and you're not. So if you start doing small things, for example, like serving your ice cream to yourself in a bowl, and eating just the bowl instead of out of the container. If you add a handful of blueberries to that, and it's adding positive behaviors to what you're already doing, that shifts your mindset of, like, I'm doing something positive, and that is inconsistent with treating yourself in a negative, self-destructive way. When you're adding blueberries to your ice cream, it makes you feel better. It's like, I have control, I can do this. Anyway, I'm getting like too bogged down in the details of habit change, but it's not really about the food. It's about your habits. It's about the way you think. And it's about the way you're using food. So that's what has to change first.
Thank you. That was very insightful.
Yes, you're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yes, I mean, so many of us. I mean, I don't really diet, I guess. I'm more like oh, I'm getting a bit tubby. I won't eat as much. And then yeah, I won't eat as much. But I don't really restrict myself because I love food too much. So,
Yeah,
but
that's good.
yeah, and then I kind of go, oh yeah, okay, back to normal, and just kind of go back to, I guess I don't stress about it like what you're saying. Whereas when I do stress about my weight, that's when it's the hardest to, like, for it to fall off. So what you're saying, I'm just like, oh yeah, that's kind of like, my approach, very intuitive, I think, in that way. Is that,
Good.
yeah. No, like what you're teaching people as well is being very intuitive, to be in tune with who you are, and then your body, and then really, even with what you eat, it seems like, well, you know what you need to eat, kind of like listening to yourself to then decide what it is that you eat. I mean, obviously, and then teaching them to go for that smaller portion and all that kind of stuff. Right. Yeah.
Well, we're disconnected from food. We're afraid of food. We're disconnected from the whole experience of eating for pleasure. We're eating out of containers. We're snacking on our kids' fries from Chick-fil-A. We're doing all of these things that are totally disconnecting us from the experience of eating and nurturing our bodies. It's so wonderful to, like, say, I don't really necessarily, I haven't enjoyed cooking before, so I'm going to just try something new. And you get in your kitchen and you try to make a new meal. You're taking care of yourself. You're not going to sit down and plan for a beautiful meal for yourself and take the time to prepare it and enjoy that experience and then shove it down in front of the TV. You're just not going to do that.
Yeah.
So we got to reconnect with the act of eating for pleasure and for nourishment, rather than, I'm scared of food, I can't eat carbs, can't do this, and then shoveling it down. And then it's just this death spiral. So yeah.
It's like, it feels like it's this enjoying that process and feeling the love around the process of eating. That's what it feels like. Yeah, that's beautiful. Oh, thank you so much, Camille. I've really loved our conversation. I want to ask you, I mean, obviously self-love is like the big theme here. And we talked about self-love, but I want to ask you, what does self-love mean to you, if someone were to ask you what it is?
Self-love to me means, it means a few things: forgiving yourself for your past, for your mistakes, for the things that you didn't love about yeah, that's a tough one. But yeah, forgive yourself, accept yourself, love yourself. Two, listen to your intuition, what it's telling you, connect with who you are, your soul. And three is a big one to me. Self-love to me means drop it like a freaking hot potato, what anyone else thinks about you. You know, let it go. It's a recipe for a horrible life, to constantly be changing what you do in anticipation of how other people are going to feel about it. What do you feel? What do you think? And as they say, no is a complete sentence. Just say, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love
So
that. Yeah,
my
definitely.
three keys to self-love.
Yeah, it's so important. We just get told that we need to please everyone, and we don't, and the person we don't please is ourselves. And that's when the self-hatred and all that stuff comes up, because like you say, we're not honoring ourselves. So I love that. No is a complete sentence.
It is.
Definitely. Amen. Amen to that.
That's a hard one for me to learn. I'm just getting to where I can say, no, I don't want to. You don't have to explain or justify or defend your choices. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And
Yeah.
I think it's a constant thing for most women to continue to work on, even if you've been doing, been on the journey and doing all the inner work. It's hard. You don't want to let people down. You don't want to feel like you're disappointing people, but
We're disappointing ourselves with that back glance.
Yeah, it's just remembering that we need to honor ourselves and fill our own cup first before helping others. Yeah. And I usually ask this question at the beginning of the podcast, but you were talking about your journey, and I went, oh, I'm just going to jump in and keep going. And there's probably a bit of overlap with the last question that I asked you, but what is your definition of an awakened feminine?
Someone who honors herself, an awakened feminine is someone who's completely in touch with every aspect of her personality, of her desires. This is a big one to me, of your sexual identity. That is huge. That is our power. It's not just about sex. It's about how you put your power out into the world. So that's embracing that, embracing just really every aspect of who you are. And also, so important, deciding what you want your life to be like from this point forward. And it could be anything. It's not selfish. It's selfish to hold yourself back from the world, because we could all be benefiting from what you have to offer. Yeah,
exactly. And if you weren't doing what you're doing, then you wouldn't be able to help all your clients. So it is definitely true. Holding back, it is selfish. Yeah, thank you. That's such a beautiful definition. Thank you so much. And Camille, before we wrap up, I'd love to find out what is setting your soul on fire right now.
Doing these kinds of interviews, helping women, putting myself out there, it sets me on fire, because I felt such shame for the longest time about even down to who I was as a person. It sets me on fire now that I'm like, you know what? I'm going to tell my whole story. I'm not going to be ashamed of anything anymore. And I'm going to use everything that I experienced in my life. If I take it to my grave without using it to help other people, it was a total waste. So that sets me on fire, is to help women.
I love that. Thank you so much, Camille, for sharing your love and wisdom with us today. If people want to find out more about you or how they can work with you, where should they go?
Yeah, I'm at Camille Martin RD for registereddietitian.com. So CamilleMartinRD.com.
Awesome. Yeah. I'll have all your details in the show notes so people can reach out to you. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you, Kaki. I loved it. It was so fun.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye.